Shalom, everybody. How y'all doing today? Shalom, shalom, shalom. Welcome to the next episode of Reading with SHILO. What's up, everybody? How you doing? I'm SHILO. I'm out here. What up? What up with you? We're starting to get cold down here. I don't know about what y'all at. Oh, where y'all at? It's cold to me. So we're here to pick back up in chapter 2 today. Chapter 2 of The Medical Apartheid by Miss Harriet A. Washington, man. We're moving right along. We're moving right along in the book, man. A lot of good info. And we're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing, doing our book thizzle. Our reading thizzle. Yeah. We're going to keep pushing. It's cold. Ooh, I need some hot cocoa. Yeah, but we, before we get started, we've been doing things good for about a week for show. About a week for show of the routine. Work your body, work your mind, work your body. Man, we've been doing good. We're doing good and trying to continue to grow and make a habit. Make a habit. Something that we can keep up with. But I don't even know what I'm going to do today. Oh, we just got to do 25 things. And I don't even want to do 25 things today, honestly. I really don't. I really don't. But I think I'm going to just go ahead and do some push-ups and get push-ups out the way. Come on, so let's get started. I don't care how tired you are. Damn it, get your ass up. Get up. Get up out your bed. Raise your head. Make sure that you with the living and not with the dead. And let's move along. Let's move along and get the day started. The day started. Oh, man. Oh, Lord. It's so cold out here. It's cold in my house. Oh, man. Oh, Lord. Hold up. Nothing but syrup in my book. Man, I might do 25. Man, shit. Oh, man, I don't want to do 25 push-ups. I don't want to do it. All right, we're going to do 25 stuff, man. We're going to go. Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, shit. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh, my pants falling off. 17. Let me tie my shit. 17. Remember, I'm on 17. I know what you want. 17. I'll start at 15. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 in that sucker. More than 25. Oh, shit. 25 things. Did you do your 25? I did mine. Oh, I'm in here. I'm out here. Cold. We're doing 25. Oh, I feel like PT. Good for you, good for me. Oh, shit. When it's cold outside, you need to put some clothes on. All right. So we done with our body. Let's get to our mind. We worked our body. Let's get to our mind. Miss Harriet A. Washington, Medical Apartheid. Chapter 2 we are beginning today. Let's go on this journey. Just take a look. It's in a book. We're reading with SHILO. I can't read anything. Oh, yes, we can, baby. Oh, yes, we can. We can read about anything. And we gonna read about anything. But right now, let's jump into Harriet A. Washington. Chapter 2, Medical Apartheid. Profitable wonders. Profitable wonders. Chapter 2, antebellum medical experimentation with slaves and freedmen. Montgomery, Alabama, has not forgotten the heroic role of the 3 slaves, an archer, Lucy, and Betsy, who suffered not only that they themselves might be cured, but that women injured in childbirth and future generations might be saved from lives of misery and invalidism. Seal Harrison, Women's Surgery of 1950. A lie told often enough becomes the truth. Lennon. I can believe that one. How many lies that we have been told in this society that we believe to be true? They tell it enough, like Christmas. Christopher Columbus finding America. Lie. They ain't found nothing. Blacks being from Africa, I think that's a lie. But all the holidays we have, lies. So many things that we believe is true. When he escaped to England in 1847, the former slave who had been known as Fed claimed John Brown as his full name. Brown was a compact, dark-skinned man in his 40s, with strong features and a dense thatch of black hair that sprang from his crown at an angle. Though it had been brushed to either side of the indeterminate part. His body bore the stigma of enslavement. His hands were latticed with ropey scars, and the black iris of his bulging right eye lay off center, perpetually looking inward. For all this, the worn colonial image gracing his memoir shows a man of estimable appearance in a sober woolen suit and brokered waistcoat. Man, I guess he was still trying to look good for the times. He is neither smiling nor frowning, but exudes a satisfied air of quiet dignity, a survivor. But of what? And in 1855, Brown describes his enslavement to L.A. Shimorzau, secretary of the British and Foreign Anti-Slavery Society, which published his memoirs as Slave Life in Georgia. Among Brown's most remarkable recollections was the period he spent with Dr. Thomas Hamilton of Clinton, Georgia, during the 1820s and the early 1830s. Now, Hamilton was not only a widely respected physician, but the very epitome of the Southern gentleman. He was born into wealth and in Washington, Georgia, graduated from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine, and became a wealthy plantation owner, a physician, a politician, and a trustee of the Medical Academy of Georgia. But Hamilton had another face. Brown recalls how he fell into the doctor's hand when he was master. A man named Stephen fell ill. I do not know what his malady was. It must have been serious, for they called in to treat him on one Dr. Hamilton who lived in Jones County and who had a great name. He cured Stephen, who was so pleased that he told the doctor to ask him for any favor, and it should be granted. Now, it so happened that this Dr. Hamilton had been trying to get a great number of experiments for the purpose of finding out the best remedies for sunstroke. I was, it seems, a strong and likely subject to be experimented upon, and the doctor, having fixed the thing in his mind, asked Stephen to lend me to him. Now, this he did at once, never caring to inquire what was going to be done with me. I myself did not know, and even if I had been made aware of the nature of the trials I was about to undergo, I could not have helped myself. There was nothing for it to be but passive resignation, and I gave myself up in ignorance and in much fear. Now, Hamilton had a deep pit dug, and built a fire in it that he damped so that Only the burning embers remained. These were retained until the doctor, using the thermometer, ascertained that the pit was sufficiently hot. He then made Brown sit naked on a stool in the pit and covered the opening with a wet blanket to retain the heat. Only Brown's head was exposed while temperatures routinely exceeded 100 degrees. And Hamilton then administered his various heat remedies until Brown recalls, though I tried hard to keep up against its effects, in about half an hour I fainted. I was then lifted out and revived, the doctor taking notes of the degrees of heat when I left the pit. And after each day's work in the field, Brown was given some nostrum and made to repeat the ordeal. But after all this scientific effort, Hamilton resorted to chicanery, whatever that is. Chicanery. Let's look it up. Let's look up chicanery. 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 Ooh, man, I'm cold. I'm cold. I'm cold. Chicanery. Trickery. Chicanery means trickery. Chicanery. You on that chicanery? Hamilton, found that cayenne pepper tea accomplished his object. And a very nice thing he made of it. As soon as he got back home, he advertised that he had discovered the remedy to sunstroke. It consisted of pills which were to be dissolved in cayenne pepper tea, without which he said the pills would not produce any effect. Nor did I see how they should have done so, for they were only made of common flour. However, he succeeded in getting them into the general use, and as he asked a good price, he soon realized a large fortune. I bet. After a few days' rest, Brown was subjected to a new set of experiments, for which he was bled every other day. But still, worse was to come. He set to work to ascertain how deep my black skin went. This he did by applying blisters to my head, my hands, legs, and feet, which bear the scars to this day. He used to blister me at intervals of about 2 weeks. He also tried other experiments upon me, which I cannot dwell upon. And after Brown's matter-of-fact account of being poached to the point of fainting, and of his repeatedly burned and flayed skin, one wonders what other experimental horrors he couldn't dwell upon. When he could bear the surgical torture no longer, Brown fled to England. And there were many people like Brown. The preceding chapter sketched how scientific racism, abusive medical attentions, and itrophobia, the fear and loathing many Black Americans harbor toward the American medical establishment, are connected. However, African Americans have also been exploited as the subjects of abusive medical experimentations, which African Americans have been exploited as the subjects of abusive medical experimentation, which was once standard medical practice. More than scientific racism, more than heroic purges, bleedings, and cathartics, and more than the punitive use of therapeutics involuntary medical experimentation was a scientific personification of enslavement. Violence, pain, and shame joined as physicians forced the enslaved body into medical service, not to cure, but to profit. Medical experimentation was profitable in terms of recovered health and life for whites who benefited once the medical process had been perfected. It was also a profitable source of fame and sometimes fortune for physicians. Owners boarded the captives' bodies of sick slaves to hospitals or hired well ones to physicians for use in experiments. Sometimes they sold a slave outright for such use, particularly if she had become too old to infirm to work or to breed. Many slave owners, such as Dr. Hamilton and Dr. Marion Sims, Dr. Nathaniel Bozeman, and Dr. Stilwell, were themselves physicians who bought and raised slaves for the express purpose of using them for experimentation. Not only slaves were thus used, but also free persons of color. The perilous trial. The perilous trial. What constitutes medical experimentation? The word experiment comes from the Latin proposition ex, meaning from or out of, and periculum, a dangerous trial. To conduct an experiment is to risk success or failure. And when human health and lives hang in the balance, the stakes are high indeed. And famed French researcher Claude Bernard provided a definitive feature of scientific experimentation in 1865. An experiment is an observation induced with the object of control. Thus, the researcher conducting an experiment does not simply observe a medical phenomenon. He or she induces a change under strictly controlled conditions, makes observations, and then logically analyzes them. Some medical experiments test treatments that may help the experimental subject. These are therapeutic experiments. Other experiments involve non-therapeutic tests that are not designed to help the experimental subject. The experimental standards that govern research today differ considerably from those physicians followed prior to the 20th century. And today, a matrix of legislation protects human subjects, at least in theory, and informed consent is a necessary requirement for most experiments with human beings. Informed consent is not a signed piece of paper, but rather a fluid, continuous process by which a researcher informs the subject in detail of what he or she proposes to do, and why it is being proposed, and what possible consequences the experiment carries. Only then does the researcher ask the subject's permission, which must be obtained in writing. I wonder, did they do all that for the jab? I don't remember none of that. I remember hearing people getting their consent and writing about, you're going to take this and what the side effects are. So they can make as they say in here, informed decision. Only then does the researcher ask the subject's permission, which must be obtained in writing. And despite the signing of the consent form, the process has not ended. The researcher must continue to inform the subject of developments in the experiment that could affect him, and the subject may withdraw from the experiment at any time. It's called The Medical Apartheid. The Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. It's also in the description. The Medical Apartheid. To perform an experiment without informed consent is a serious medical and legal abuse today. However, informed consent was not part of the ethical mores of the 18th and 19th centuries and was not required by law. Physicians did typically ask the patient's consent to conduct experiments, but they did not explain the reasoning or detail for their intent. In addition, when we consider 18th and 19th century experimentation, it is important to keep in mind that medicine of the period countenanced a larger degree of therapeutic modification than is allowed today. But the standards of past centuries, not every spontaneous decision to try a new, untested medication or combination can be considered unethical medical experimentation. For the reason, discussions of early medical experiments with African Americans in this chapter do not focus on lesser, but still egregious ethical breaches, such as the dangerous therapeutic experiments without informed consent. Neither do I discuss those many experimental approaches that were essentially therapeutic adjustments of commonly accepted remedies and methods. Southern physicians and scientists engaged in many such hazardous experiments, such as those of T.S. Hopkins, an M.D. of Waynesville, Georgia, who prescribed caustic solutions of nitric acid to 5 Black children for asthma. And similarly, Joseph E. May, M.D., prescribed Herculean doses of calomel and quinine to a slave with malaria, who fortunately recovered. These were hazardous experiments that would not have been practiced on whites, and they were done without the subject's permission, but their ends was at least partially therapeutic. The doctor was trying to effect a cure, or was he? I think he was playing fucking Frankenstein, is what I think. That's what it sounded like. A lot of these doctors was playing Dr. Frankenstein. Instead, this chapter offers a few examples of the many experiments like those to which Brown was subjected. That is, they were involuntary, painful, dangerous, and either frankly non-therapeutic or obviously more harmful than beneficial. The experimental abuse of African Americans was not a cultural anomaly. It simply mirrored in the medical arena the economic, social, and health abuses that the larger society perpetrated against people of color, especially in the slave-holding states. Now, no one, white or black, would have chosen to be the subject of the dangerous experiment, but Blacks were especially wary, based upon their earlier abuse experiences with Western medicine. They were also wary about Western medical experimentation with its mechanist approach to the body, was philosophically inimical to the spiritual community-based and holistic African system of healing as practiced by Black healers. Western physicians had placed African holistic plant and spirit-centered healing systems outside the purview of medicine, relegating them to a realm of superstition, the occult, voodoo, and old wives' tales. In the same manner, many African Americans placed the experimentation to which they were subjected outside of the accepted modes of medicine and healing. Oral histories and extant writings suggest that many African Americans accepted and even incorporated some Native Americans and Western healing techniques, but considered invasive medical experimentation a form of medical torture or even a medical cannibalism. And before the early 20th century rise of the U.S. hospital movement, physicians and scientists conducted medical research in slave quarters, backyard shacks they designated as slave hospitals, and clinic wards. No organized bodies coordinated coherent research plans, and some research was utterly spontaneous and unrecorded. No, sir. I have not read it yet. Somebody else has been mentioning that book. I don't have it. If I had it, I would read it. Physicians' recollections, medical journals, and institutional records limn a pattern of abusing African Americans that was supported by custom and sometimes by law. These accounts could be astonishingly frank because the authors were writing only for the eyes of other physicians, white males and their own class, white males of their own class, who attended hospital wards and read medical journals. And moreover, African Americans were without legal protection and thus unable to hamper physicians' activities. As a result, early medical records routinely identified African Americans as experimental subjects, especially in the slaveholding states. Half the original articles in the 1836 Southern Medical and Surgical Journal dealt with experiments performed upon blacks. It is true that blacks constituted a significant part of the South's population, nearly 40% in 1860, but they were still represented far above their proportions in hospitals and clinics. And for example, when Dr. James Douglas pioneered a new eye surgery, 4 of the 5 experimental subjects, 80% were black. Slaves were used preferentially to test genitourinary surgeries. Genitory. I wonder if that's genital, if that's dealing with the genitals. It don't say genital. Genitourinary. Genitourinary. Genit. Genitorinary. Genitary. At least that's how I'm pronouncing it. Genitourinary. What a word. Let's see if it's in here. G E F G H G E. Genitory. I've looked it up before. Genitourinary. Oh man. Of or relating to the genital and urinary organs or functions. Oh, I was correct. Genitourinary. Sounds like genital. Beginning in 1830, 30 of 37 experimental cesarean sections performed by Dr. Francis Marie Prevost, I've heard that name before, used slaves. Experimental ovary Ovariotomy. There we go. Experimental ovariotomy and surgery for bladder stone also relied heavily upon Black and mulatto subjects. In an exhaustive 1982 article detailing the antebellum experimental use of Blacks, medical historian Todd Savitt summarized this risk. Some whites took advantage of Southern Blacks by testing new techniques and remedies in the name of medical progress. And in several instances, physicians purchased Blacks for the sole purpose of experimentation. In others, the doctors used free Blacks and slaves owned by others. Not all experimental subjects were Black, of course, and in northern states where approximately 10% of Blacks lived, white subjects tended to outnumber Black subjects to their numbers. White subjects typically emanated from the lowest social tiers. For example, Alex St. Martin, a poor French Canadian trapper, was harassed, pursued, and studied for years by a successful physician who wished to experiment on him after an unusual accident caused a permanent opening in his stomach. So was Phineas Gage, a laborer who survived an industrial accident but suffered severe brain damage, which was assiduously recorded and tested by the long series of physicians. White subjects, however, enjoyed some legal protection and could leave when they wished, to the frustration of medical researchers. We have seen that scientific racists successfully promoted several necessary medical fictions that made Blacks attractive as experimental subjects. And most physicians of the day also believed that Blacks had low intellectual capacities and were sexually promiscuous, that diseases manifested differently in Blacks, and that Blacks could not be trusted to take medicine, to follow treatment, or maintain basic standards of hygiene without white supervision. And finally, physicians believed that Blacks naturally they thought that Blacks, notably syphilis, that threatened the common beliefs, served as rationales for abusive medical experimentation. And one of the most tenacious, one of the most tenacious beliefs was that Blacks did not feel pain or anxiety. Oh, I feel pain. Oh, I hate it. Which excused painful surgical explorations without anesthesia on Blacks. Dr. Charles White declared, the Blacks bear surgical operations much better than white people. And what would be the cause of insupportable pain for white men? A Negro would almost disregard. I have amputated the leg of many Negroes who have held the upper part of the limb themselves. And when Kentucky surgeon Ephraim McDowell wrote the gynecological advances that were achieved by exquisitely painful surgeries, Dr. James Johnson, editor of the London Medical and Chirurgical Review, CHIRURGICAL, CHIRURGICAL, chirurgical. I'm stumped on that word. Chirurgical Review sneered when we come to reflect that all the women operated in Kentucky, except one, were negresses, and that these people will bear anything with nearly, if not quite as much impunity as dogs and rabbits. Our wonder is lessened. Ooh, we got some parts up in here. We got some stuff. It's gonna be a part 2. Ah, shit. Got hooked. Politics in the laboratory. Politics in the laboratory. Although experimentation with African Americans was the medical norm, especially in the South, some whites were deeply opposed to it. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, abolitionists wrote exposés in 1893, Theodore Wright Weld uncovered the cruelty of medical experimentations in American slavery as it is, declaring public opinion would tolerate surgical experiments, operations, and processes performed upon slaves, which it would execrate if performed upon their masters. Yeah, you wouldn't do that shit to them white folk, to them pink people. Such pointed criticism may help to explain why some physician scientists who spoke candidly of injecting, dosing, or performing revolutionary surgeries on their slave patients in the first half of the 19th century expressed their actions more guardedly in later writings. For example, Dr. James Marion Sims eventually hid his subject's race and even illustrated reports of experiments on Black slave women with illustrations of bourgeois white matrons. Journals sometimes dispense with racial labels, although their articles still offered broad social cues about their subject's ethnicity. Language was often tortured to disguise the racial nature of hazardous experimentation. In the best patrician tradition of its time, Thomas Jefferson was not only a country squire and leading politician, but also a scientist. Eager to make his mark, Jefferson embarked on enthusiastic adventures in vaccination by gambling with the lives of his slaves. He wished to establish that Edward Jenner's new technique of vaccination was superior to the technique of inoculation, or as it came to be called a century later, viralization. Inoculation consisted of inserting or injecting infected material from a sick person directly into a well one to induce immunity. It sounds like what they used to do with the chicken pox. You're going to put you around people with chicken pox so you can get the chicken pox so you can develop an immunity to it. Vaccination in this era referred to the process of injecting cowpox to provide immunity to smallpox, as Jenner first described in 1796. Now, Jefferson obtained some cowpox vaccine indirectly from Dr. Benjamin Waterhouse of Boston, but it was known to be of dubious potency. The vaccine had failed to protect the subjects of the earlier trial, and Jefferson spent the summer vaccinating 200 of his family's and his neighbors' slaves. Only after they escaped illness did Jefferson inject his white family at Monticello. The vaccinated person remained well, and the unvaccinated ones fell ill. But this did not convince Jefferson's scientific peers, so Jefferson had to vaccinate slaves injected with live smallpox material. There we go. When his slaves remained well, Jefferson wrote his daughter Martha to proceed in order to place our families and neighbors in perfect security. As a seasoned politician, Jefferson knew that his experiments on slaves would be criticized and that they seemed at variance with his sympathetic statements about blacks. So he slyly used language to deflect possible criticism, referring to conducting experiments on some of my own family, without clarifying that the family in question consisted of slaves owned by himself and his sons. An epidemic of typhoid fever raged in Virginia throughout the summer of 1832, and the planters feared that the infected slaves would be unable to work and would endanger whites. So Dr. Robert G. Jennings had no cure, but he decided to test the hunch that smallpox vaccine might protect against typhoid. He administered the vaccine to 30 blacks, slave and free, choosing them from unaffected family members of typhoid patients. And in order to guarantee that they would be exposed, he then withheld the vaccine from other uninfected family members. Jennings reported that those who were vaccinated remained disease-free, and the unvaccinated became ill. When Jennings then vaccinated blacks suffering from typhoid, he jubilantly recorded that they recovered more quickly. And Jennings delivered the investigative coup de grace, when he decided to vaccinate 11 of 12 family members, withholding vaccine from the 12th. Only the unvaccinated slave fell ill. This successful experiment on an enslaved population defies all logic. Because smallpox vaccine is not infectious against typhoid. One cannot be certain whether serendipity or outright fraud was involved, but the mathematical odds against such results arising by luck are staggering, and no one has ever successfully duplicated Jennings' experiment. And many other experiments on slaves accrued to the black subject, and white patients were not asked and certainly were not forced to assume these risks. The next decade saw an escalation of sadism in experiments in slaves. And in 1846, records of Dr. Walton F. Jones of Pittsburgh, Virginia, revealed that he experimented by pouring boiling water on naked enslaved typhoid pneumonia patients at 4-hour intervals. He described one such treatment as on a sick 25-year-old enslaved man. The patient was placed on the floor on his face, and about 5 gallons of water at the temperature so near the boiling point as to barely allow immersion of the hand was thrown immediately on the spinal column. Which seemed to arouse his sensibilities somewhat, as shown by an effort to cry out. Hollering. Jones did not reveal what had inspired him to try this remedy, and he offered a rather thin rationale for the treatment, suggesting only that it worked by somehow reestablishing the capillary circulation. In June of the same year, John M.B. Hardin, M.D. of Liberty County, Georgia, published an article in the Southern Medical and Surgical Journal that described how he had stripped blood vessels from the limbs of a Negro and of 3 hogs. Hardin then measured the width of the blood vessels to determine the relative areas of the trunk and branches of the arteries, with the stated intent of furthering anatomical knowledge. But none of these increasingly painful medical intrusions was as infamous as the slave experimentation conducted by James Marion Sims, MD of Alabama. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6. Right about 6 pages. We'll do that. We might come back later. We're gonna stop there. We're gonna stop there right there. We'll make that a stopping point. We'll make that a stopping point. A little under our reading today. We're gonna start back up with James Marion Sims, Savior and Sadist, because there really is no. See, I'm trying to find stopping points when it gets to a certain part. And between here and the beginning or the end of chapter 2 and the beginning of chapter 3, there won't be another stopping point for a minute. For at least 3-4 pages. For at least 4 pages. And then by the time we finish them 4 pages, we only have 3 pages left. So I'll make it a 2-part. And we'll finish off chapter 2 and part 2 of the reading. Anyway, my phone backing up anyway. So we'll stop it there. That has been part 1 of chapter 2 of The Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. Harriet A. Washington. So far, so good. Reading good. Reading good. I'm still stumbling. I'm stumbling over some stuff. It's some medical terms I don't understand, which is cool. That's fine. We'll try to look them up. That's what you got to do. You don't know something? Look it up. Figure it out. We're going to keep on pushing. I'm cold, man. I am cold. But let's get the 25 done since I'm so cold. Maybe I'll warm up. Get your behind up. Hurry up. Get up and let's do something. Let's do something. So I'm going to do 25. 25, man. 25 something. You do 25 something. I'm doing 25 something. I'm doing jumping jacks right now. I'm going to get it out of the way. 25. I got to make sure my pants don't fall off, man. 25. Let's get it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. 25 things. 25 things. If they was, they'd grab you around your damn neck and choke you. Yeah, but that's what it is. We did 25 things to start and 25 things to end. We worked our body, worked our mind, worked our body again. And we're going to keep pushing. We're going to keep pushing, finding things that we can learn and grow from and trying to build better habits. Trying to grow ourselves. And we're going to continue pushing on in the book of The Medical Apartheid by Miss Harriet A. Washington, which is turning out to be very informative. Very informative read. A very informative read. A lot of medical stuff, man. Need to be a damn doctor sometimes to understand some of this stuff. But it is what it is. It's good. It's good. We learning something. We learning something together for all those that stop by and take a earful. Friends, countrymen, lend me your ears. I can tell you some shit that you might not want to hear. But, hey, it is the treasures that is hidden in these books. So we're going to take us a gander and take us a look and see what we got. But it's all gravy. It's all gravy. I hope that y'all have a warm, wonderful day. Because it's cold. Warm up wherever you're at. Put some socks on your feet, man. Put a sweater or a jacket on your back. Cover your head and your ears. Warm yourself up. Stay healthy. Build your mind. Build your body. Don't procrastinate. Let's be better than we were yesterday. Let's do it today. You have everything you need to succeed. If you can see, if you can hear, if you can talk, if you can smell, if you can touch, and if you can walk, if you can think, You have everything you need to succeed today. Let's push it. Let's make it happen. Don't put off the things that you can do today for tomorrow. Until next time, man. That was this episode of Reading with SHILO. Shalom, everybody, man. Catch me on the next one, man. Catch me on the next one where we pick up with part 2 of chapter 2, Profitable Wonders in Medical Apartheid by Harriet A. Washington. Shalom, everybody. Catch y'all on the next one. SHILO out. I'm out here. Oh, man. I don't want none of that shit. I want to stop the thing. Bomb. There we go. I'm out.